Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. Another great episode. This is a very interesting episode, and obviously it's a very personal case for Bull, which don't come up that often. But basically, this involves his friend Mac, who got drunk, was yelling at a security guard named, a security guard, yeah, guy who ran security at the casino named Pat. Basically, Pat ended up dead, and now Mac is the only, is labeled as the killer. And now Bull takes on this case for him. And turns out, Mac is a college friend for Bull, who Bull kind of like owes him a favor. Because basically him and Mac ran like a poker game back in the day, kind of getting into trouble and stuff like that, which it's kind of interesting learning that about Bull. Bull seems like he might be the type of dude that kind of got himself in trouble. I mean, you can see it kind of on a daily basis with the show of just how I don't know. It's something like it's not too much of a stretch to believe that that was Bull back in the day. But basically, after enough time, he kind of found the path he wants to be on, and he kind of straightened out his life or something like that. I don't know. I'm not saying that Bull was like a troublemaker all the way through. Maybe he was. I mean, there's still bits and pieces. I mean, like large chunks of his life we really don't know next to anything about. So, but learning that about him was kind of interesting. But Mac took the fall for him. Interestingly enough, Bull kind of throws it against Mac later on that, hey, like no matter what happened, like the fact of the matter is we tend to admit from the story like, oh man, it's so selfless thing, you have my back, you're my bro. But in actuality, they were going to kick you out anyway because you missed class so much. You taking a fall for me wasn't that big of a sacrifice. Yeah, you still helped me out, you had my back, but it's not like it was some selfless thing. You were just in trouble anyway. So you were already out the door anyway. You're like, well, I'll take the fall for it. I don't want to be around here anyway. So, but this case was very different. Like I said, I always appreciate the fact that they add a little bit of like little change up. And obviously in this case, things change up to a big certain degree because obviously it took place on a reservation. There are different laws. So it's not even like they could take this to a federal, courtroom just because like because it happened on a reservation. So like I said, the reservation laws kind of take in, and the courtroom works very differently. Obviously, rather than a judge, it's a chief, and the prosecutor and the defenders are like, there's no like real lawyers in there. It's just like, it's not like, oh, you can pay lawyers to kind of represent you. It's like, no, the chief does like, it's like, oh, these people, you're kind of good at your jobs, step forward and take these positions. So it's like, that's what that comes down to. So that's just kind of interesting. And at the same time too, the jury is of 13 people, not 12, because majority is what rules in this case. So like, say majority picks like guilty or not guilty. That's it. It doesn't have to be unanimous like in a federal court. And you also end up finding out, interestingly enough, like reasonable doubt doesn't apply. Like if there is even like a shred of ability of people believing like, yeah, there's a chance that Mac did it, then that's all they need, So, and like I said, it's kind of a new system that they kind of have to find a workaround from. They can't really tap into their usual thing. Like, it's always interesting because they have this great system of getting to know people and read people. It's part of Bull's job, to read people. And that's what TAC helps them do, but it's like, it's so interesting. They have this powerful system and sometimes they can't even use it because it's meaningless. It doesn't help in this case because even the jury isn't someone like, oh, they help pick. It's like, no, the jury are volunteers. It's usually in the basic, in, Mac's representative in this episode, was a guy named, Tema. So it's like, even he was kind of like, yeah, it's practically the same people over and over again just because how it works. So it's like if you see these people in one particular courtroom, they're most likely going to have presided over like a jury for like multiple other cases. So just because it's a very small community, everybody knows everybody, which kind of screwed Mac over because pretty much everyone hated him. And it seems like it's a situation where it's like it's mainly because of Mac himself, in a sense of like Mac ended up the way he is, constantly gambling, getting drunk, being obnoxious, being kind of like the douchebag that everyone knows. It's like, oh god, so obviously everything was kind of stacked against him from the beginning, but it's like we never actually found out what particular thing led to him being kind of that. I guess it's just the way he is, in a sense of like things happen in life and he's just kind of like a, oh man, just skating by troublemaker type, and it's just he always stay that way. kind of always waiting for his luck to kind of turn around, essentially. So there was kind of an interesting thing about him that Bull kind of brought up. He's like, oh, so what happened to that girl that I knew you were with? And he's like, oh yeah, I found out it turns out she was married. And immediately later on in the episode, because every time he kept looking at Pat's wife, and the courtroom was like, oh, is she the married wife that you were with? Is that about to turn into this whole thing? Is she actually behind this whole murder or whatever? And I was thinking like it was some plot like, oh man, she's actually the one that killed her husband, but you're taking a fall for her because you care about her, but you're trying to avoid going to jail for her also. You're not trying to send her to jail, but you're not trying to go to jail yourself. And I was thinking that's what this was all about. And she was tearing up and looking at it because it's like, oh man, like I feel bad because like we both know the truth and blah. That's what I thought it was. Turns out not to be the case at all. She wasn't even the lady that he was like, you know, that married lady that he had an affair with. I mean, because even him himself said it's not like I didn't know she was married. I just, you know, didn't care to keep that information. It wasn't important to me. So, and also the way Bull phrased it, it's like, no, Bull knew the girl in particular, so he'd met her, so that would have come up in some shape or form. So I'm a complete not an idiot for thinking like that. But what really kind of took me by surprise was the fact is that Mac was actually going to run. The fact of the matter is he kind of didn't show up to court until like the very last minute until Bull gave him that like final message about like, oh, you know, because Bull snapped at him because it's like, you were about to run. And it's like, I invested so much time and effort into you, and you're going to do this to me. You kind of claim we're friends and everything. I put, you know, because obviously we've talked about it this season too. Like, Tack is in a position where it's like, money's kind of on a tighter end to the point like Marissa had him sign some forms to basically like, okay, Tack kind of put up the money, the day-to-day money to pay for Mac's bail. But then like the money had to come from Bull's accounts to kind of cover the money that Tack used. So because in his eyes it's just like, I'm here helping you out, you call me and I'm here, and what are you doing? You're drinking and you're about to run away, you know, you're trying to, you know, show up at the end. So I mean there's that. So but you gotta give major props to his lawyer too, just for the fact of the matter is that he was just kind of like, especially when he would examine like cross-examining like the officer and stuff. I'm sure cross-examining is not the right word, but it basically was breaking it down. And I love that line of his. And the cop was like, you're putting words in my mouth. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, we just had lunch. And there's kind of little giggles and everyone's like, he's good. He's really good. Because he was very soft-spoken and just kind of very like composed for the very beginning, which isn't a bad, I mean, I'm not trying to say that in a negative thing, but it just like, it just shows you how good he is at his job. I mean, that's why he was kind of picked for this too anyway. I mean, usually they kind of, not always, it's very rarely, but it doesn't always happen, but typically they kind of have issues with the lawyers in some shape or form. Obviously, last episode with Brad Garrett's character, like there was some, but that's just because Jason, I mean, I almost completely forgot about that and thinking about that too, that the fact of the matter is that, last week's episode was personal for Bull too. Like, I mean, it's not like cases aren't personal for him, but still, you know, this particular case was connected to like his own personal life and stuff. So, you know, I guess in his mind too, because that whole situation with Mac also means like, you know, he also probably felt guilt too, because it's like he ended up in the position he's in now because Mac made that sacrifice all those years ago. And it's like ever since, subsequently since, Mac's life hasn't always worked out. It's just getting fired, kind of like being, you know, drunk, getting run out of every casino and stuff like that. So maybe on some level, Bull feels bad for him, blames himself. So, but getting back to like the real killer behind this, it was the dude Joe. I thought it was so interesting because it's like, oh man, it's him, the guy who's actually also on the jury. That's pretty interesting. It also turns out the other security guy who was like, oh man, it seemed like he was so tight with Pat. Actually, it turns out that he was behind it too. Because basically this is all about like, they would constantly steal cars from like certain place in the, at the casino parking lot. And basically they take it to like a chop shop he owns and break it down piece by piece and stuff like that. But Pat was closing in because he put up security cameras and put a big damper in their business and stuff like that. So the whole thing was set up for Mac to take the fall because everyone hates him. Everyone knows his reputation. Because even if you didn't know him personally, you know of people who constantly talk about him and just how terrible he is. Once again, it's a very small community. But his lawyer did bring up some good points of like, yeah, Mac was over the body, but it's like blood on his clothes. The fact of the matter is, oh, he was trying to help. Did you find a gun on him? No. And what did he do? He called. It's like, can you really tell me that he's the one behind all this? There was no weapon found on him, and he actually called. Like, what kind of criminal hides the weapon and it's like, oh, tries to play like this? No one does that. I mean, probably cut to an example of something like that happening in a TV show, like, um, that maybe I'm not familiar with, but nevertheless, you know. But ultimately, obviously the charges are dropped against Max, so, but it doesn't seem like he's staying around. He is moving on, which Bull's kind of like, I just helped save you and you're just gonna like up and leave. I'm kind of a little disappointed about that, but at the same time, it's just like, and Bull's kind of like, there's a chance, there's no guarantee that you're going to just hit it big like that next time you're, gambling and stuff, that you're going to hit it big. Which he's like, yeah, things, but it doesn't mean you're 100% right about this. You don't know this for sure. So, but Bull does say like, hey, no matter what, I do want you to know that you are my friend and you can call me anytime. It's like, okay, like them mending fences like that was pretty good. So once again, I think like, even if it's not like he feels like he owes Mac, at the very least, it's just like, you were a good friend to me at a time I needed one. The fact of the matter is we haven't really talked to each other in years. I mean, it hasn't been like a very long time. It's only been like 6 years since the last time they really hung out and talked, and that was Las Vegas. I think it was kind of around the time he was like, still working in Las Vegas and kind of got fired. But nevertheless, it's like he's like a lot of fun. He's such a good guy, like once again, a good friend to Bull. So it's good to see that things kind of ended on a good term. So hopefully he kind of keeps himself out of trouble. Most likely not going to be the case, but hopefully he did a little growing from this situation. That even if he kind of repeats himself, he won't make the same mistakes at the very least. We can be hopeful. So, but that's obviously like the main plot of the episode. We also had the whole thing that kind of plays up a little bit in this episode. It actually starts in the middle. It played like a smaller part in the episode, but like we got to meet Marissa's new guy. His name is Kyle, and I love the fact this Bull has to tell himself, no matter what, no matter who the guy is, you're gonna like him. No matter who the guy is, you're gonna like him. He's like, just smile, don't say it, just smile. He's just smiling the entire time, like. And Bull, being who he is, he overanalyzes the dude just because like that's Bull. He can't get out of his own head. Luckily, he never said anything, but he's just analyzing everything about the dude. It's like, true story. Yeah, you cleared your throat before you said it, so I know you're lying. It's like this and that, just finding everything wrong with the guy. But then he's like, Marissa's super happy, and the fact of the matter is, like, who might, it's like, Jason, get into it, Bull, get into it, like, get with it, you can't do this because Marissa's happy, so don't try and ruin her happiness. So that was just kind of an interesting thing to me. Like, I love how that approach was. He even lies, he's like, oh yeah, sorry, gotta, text her, like, sorry, gotta leave, emergency came up, and then he's like, your guy's terrific. And it's just like, ugh, he's just so like, oh my god, I want to vomit. It's just like, he was so disgusted with the entire situation. So having to feign like he's 100% okay with it, which I'm sure, like, I think this is kind of setting up the fact is that Bull would be like that towards anyone that Marissa dated. And that doesn't just apply to Marissa. I'm sure it's to everyone that everyone that works at Tact. He'd probably be a little overprotective and kind of analyze the person like, oh yeah, this and this. But I feel like particularly out of anyone, Marissa, just because she's very important to him. Once again, it's not like a situation of romantic interest. Like, they have a very platonic relationship, and that's where they're going to stay. I don't think they would ever consider being more, because that conversation came up even in the first season. Not like, like, oh, we should give it a try. It's like, oh, we were just never going to be like that. It's like, yeah, we're better as we are now, colleagues and friends. So there was an interesting thing when you kind of found out that Kyle owns a large set of buildings in a community, that basically he's going to build a whole bunch of stuff there. So it was just kind of like a little slight thing. It didn't play out any particular way in the episode. It didn't have any importance to it, which I can only assume that's going to turn into something going forward. I don't know whether it's going to be something where it's like Bull's going to, like, Tack is going to have to work with him and kind of work for him, which Bull doesn't like him, but for Marissa's sake, he'd probably take the job and help her because it's like Marissa's probably going to ask him, can you do this for me? So maybe something like that, or maybe he ends up doing something shady, and maybe it ends up being a situation where Marissa and Bull are on opposite sides kind of again. But I mean, obviously in a very different circumstance. I don't know. That's just me kind of guessing. It's just, like I said, it just seems like such a standalone thing that obviously it has some future effect. It's going to lead into something, or something's going to happen related to it. So I'm very interested to see where that kind of goes. Like I said, a very good episode. Just the way it was structured, and just like I said, I always appreciate, like, no one trial is exactly the same. Like, even though you feel like you might have the science behind everything, there are little shifts here and there that I think the show kind of keeps you on your toes with. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.